Another poem I asked you to read this week is To His Coy Mistress by Andrew Marvell. It's on page 437. The rhyme scheme in this poem is very clear. It's A, A, B, B, C, C, D, D, E, E, and so forth. Um, the thing that I love about this poem is that it, in a nutshell, tells us the difference between the way a man looks at an affair of the heart and the way a woman looks at it. As I said in the lecture, you can figure out a lot about this poem by just looking at the title. The word coy means reluctant, not in a hurry, maybe a little embarrassed. And mistress, of course, relates the relationship between this man and the woman that he's talking to. Throughout the poem, it's the man who is the speaker, but he is expressing some thoughts. You know, I thought as I was going through the poems that we were going to look at and the ones we were going to skip, you could teach a whole unit in this poetry unit, subunit in the poetry unit, on just love poetry and the poetry of love and rejection or love and acceptance or whatever. We don't have time to do that, but it sure would be fun. If you want to look through your book, there's a poem about a man speaking to a shepherdess and the shepherdess answering back. There's a poem about the way a beautiful lady looks in her beautiful clothing. There are just all kinds of love poems, or maybe not love, but infatuation poems or seduction poems or whatever you want to call them. Okay, so the man is speaking to the young lady who has evidently maybe pushed his advances off just a little bit more than he's willing to tolerate. And he says, had we but world enough and time, this coyness lady were no crime. We would sit down and think which way to walk and pass our long love's day. Thou by the Indian Ganges side should rubies find. I by the tide of Umber would complain. I would love you 10 years before the flood, and you should, if you please, refuse me till the conversion of the Jews. My vegetable love should grow vaster than empires, and more slow. 100 years should go to praise thine eyes, and on thy forehead gaze. 200 to adore each breast, but 30,000 to the rest. An age at least to every part. And the last stage should show your heart. For, lady, you deserve this state, nor would I love at lower rate. Okay, so in the first lines, he's saying, you know, if we had all the time in the world, this wanting to prolong the affair would work out all right. And we could go around the world. You could get rubies by the river Ganges, and then we would go to the river Umber, and I would still be grouchy about the fact that we're not getting along any faster here. I would love you from 10 years before the great flood of Noah. And you could refuse until all the Jews are converted. So this could take in quite a span of time. He says, I would spend 100 years praising your eyes and your forehead, and 200 to each breast, and 30,000 to the rest of your body. Because, ma'am, You deserve, or sweetheart or dear or whatever, you deserve to be admired and to have things move along at the pace that you choose. And I wouldn't do it any other way, except we get down to line 21. He says, but at my back I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near, and yonder all before us lie deserts of vast eternity. Thy beauty shall no more be found, nor in thy marble vault shall sound my echoing song. Then worms shall try that long preserved virginity, and your quaint honor turn to dust, and into ashes all my lust. The grave's a fine and private place, but none I think to their embrace. Now therefore, while the youthful hue sits on thy skin like morning dew, and while thy willing soul transpires at every pore with instant fires, now let us sport us while we may, and now, like amorous birds of prey, rather at once our time devour, than languish in his slow-chapped power. Let us roll all our strength and all our sweetness up into one ball, and tear our pleasures with rough strife through the iron gates of life. Thus, though we cannot make our sun stand still, yet we will make him run. So he says, you know what? The problem is, I know that time is limited, and I know that if we took eternity to appreciate each other and move on with this relationship, we'd end up 6 feet under with worms chewing on us rather than in each other's arms. And so while it would be great to wait as long as we want to or as long as we can, we just don't have the time. So let's get on with it. Interesting thought, and it kind of relates the difference between how men and women look at things.